Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling something pretty wild,
Yeah.
the singularity.
It's a really fascinating concept, and it's not
Uh,
just like flying cars
or,
or
yeah, robot butlers.
robot butlers or anything like that. This singularity, as it's laid out by Ray Kurzweil, really suggests a future where technology and human intelligence kind of become so intertwined that it's
Yeah.
difficult to see where one ends and the other begins.
Yeah, we'll be looking at excerpts from his 2005 book, The Singularity is Near. And just to get a sense of his predictions, he wasn't just some tech enthusiast saying, oh, there's going to be cool gadgets in the future. He was really arguing that
Yeah.
this is inevitable, like this merging of human biology and this non-biological intelligence we're creating.
He saw it as a natural progression almost, and
Yeah.
that progression was driven by something that he called the law of accelerating returns.
Okay, the law of accelerating returns, that sounds
Yeah.
pretty intense.
It is in a way. You know how computers seem to get twice as powerful every couple of years? Right.
That's not just some coincidence.
Yeah.
That's actually an example of this law in action. Technology doesn't just improve at a steady pace, it actually explodes exponentially.
Yeah.
So imagine that applied to everything, not just computers.
So you're not talking about a future that's just like a little bit more advanced than today.
Right.
You're talking about a future that's just radically different, almost unimaginable
Exactly.
from our current perspective.
Yeah, and to understand how we get there, we really need to dive into his concept of epochs in evolution.
Okay.
He divides the history of evolution into these distinct epochs, each marked by a massive leap forward in how information is processed.
So it's not just a smooth, continuous progression. There are these points in history where things just
Yeah.
suddenly jump to a whole new level.
Think about it like this. We went from basic chemistry to DNA, then to brains, then to computers.
Right.
Each epoch builds upon the last, creating a continuously accelerating process.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. So we're in the technology epoch now.
We are.
But he's saying there's another leap coming. The next epoch, he argued, is the merge of technology and human intelligence, the singularity.
Okay, that's a pretty big leap. It's not just that machines will be super smart, but that we'll actually merge with them.
That's the essence of it. He envisioned a future where the lines between human and machine become increasingly blurred, leading to this hybrid form of intelligence that surpasses the limitations of both.
Wow, I never thought about it like that before. It's both amazing and a little scary to think about the implications. So how did he think this merger would actually happen?
One of the ways he saw it happening was through reverse engineering of the human brain. He pointed to projects like the Blue Brain Project, which aimed to create a detailed simulation of a rat brain.
I remember reading about Lloyd Watts' work on modeling auditory regions of the brain. It really highlights how these efforts aren't just about building artificial brains. It's really about
Yeah.
understanding our own consciousness.
Absolutely. And it's not just about replicating the brain's function. It's about understanding the very essence of what makes us human, our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences.
So if we can understand how consciousness arises from the physical matter of our brains, could we potentially create a form of consciousness in a non-biological system?
That's a question that he grappled with extensively. He believed that consciousness might be an emergent property of complex systems. So
Right.
it arises from the interaction of many simpler components rather than being inherent in any single component.
So it's not like there's a consciousness center in the brain.
That's not what the evidence suggests.
Right.
It seems more likely that consciousness emerges from this complex interplay of neurons, synapses, and neurotransmitters throughout the brain.
And he believed that this same kind of emergent consciousness could potentially arise in a non-biological system as well,
Yeah,
if it was sufficiently complex.
you got it. And he points to the fact that we're already creating artificial systems that exhibit some of the hallmarks of consciousness, like the ability to learn, adapt, solve problems in creative ways.
That's both exciting and a little unsettling.
Yeah.
If we're already on this path to creating conscious machines, what does that mean for the future of humanity?
That is one of the big questions that his work raises. It really challenges our assumptions about what it means to be human and forces us to consider the ethical implications of these rapidly advancing technologies.
It sounds like we're entering a whole new era of human evolution, where technology is no longer just a tool, but a partner in our journey of discovery and self-transcendence.
That's a really good way to put it. And it's important to remember that this evolution is happening right now, not just in some distant future.
Yeah.
Every day, we're making progress in understanding the brain, developing more sophisticated AI, and creating new technologies that blur the lines between the biological and the digital.
It's incredible to think about the possibilities. Imagine being able to access information from the internet instantaneously just by thinking about it,
Hmm.
or being able to control devices with the power of your mind. It's like
Mm.
something out of a superhero movie.
Those are just a few of the potential applications that he discussed. He also talked about the ability to enhance our senses, create virtual experiences that are indistinguishable from reality, and even backing up our minds, essentially achieving a form of digital immortality.
Hold on. Digital immortality. That sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel.
It does, but he argued that if we can create a sufficiently detailed model of a person's brain, including all their memories, personality traits, patterns of thought, then we could essentially create a digital copy of their mind that could continue to exist even after their physical body dies.
So it's like uploading your consciousness to a computer.
It's a similar idea, but he preferred the term mind uploading because he believed that consciousness is more than just information.
Okay.
It's a pattern of activity that emerges from the complex interactions of neurons and other biological processes.
Okay. So it's not as simple as just like copying and pasting your brain
Right.
onto a hard drive.
Right.
But even if you create a digital copy of your mind, is it really you or is it just a really sophisticated simulation?
That is one of the big philosophical questions that mind uploading raises.
Right.
He believed that if the digital copy was sufficiently detailed and accurate, then it would essentially be you just existing in a different medium.
It's a mind-bending concept,
Yeah.
and one that's sure to spark a lot of debate as we get closer to the point where it might actually be possible.
Definitely. And there are definitely ethical considerations as well.
Yeah.
Who would have access to these mind uploads? Would they have the same rights as biological humans?
Right.
These are questions that society will need to grapple with as this technology develops.
It sounds like we're heading into some pretty uncharted territory here.
We are. The singularity, if it arrives, will challenge our fundamental understanding of what it means to be human, forcing us to confront profound questions about consciousness, identity, and the future of our species.
Well, I think we've given our listeners plenty to think about so far. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
When it comes to the singularity, there's so much more to unpack from his vision.
Absolutely. We've only just begun to explore the potential implications of this transformative event. And in part two, we'll delve even deeper into his ideas, looking at how he envisioned the singularity playing out and what it might mean for our world.
So stay tuned because things are about to get even more interesting.
Picking up where we left off, you might be wondering how all this stuff that we were talking about would actually work.
I know, I am. It's one thing to talk about merging with machines and achieving digital immortality.
Right.
But it's a whole other thing to actually make it happen.
And this is where Kurzweil's optimism about technology really shines through. He really believed that most of these fantastical ideas would be possible because of nanotechnology.
You know technology, those tiny little robots we hear so much about?
Exactly. Kurzweil saw these microscopic machines operating at the cellular level as the key to bridging this gap between our biological brain and this digital world.
Okay.
He believed they could actually interact with our neurons, essentially creating a seamless interface between our minds and technology.
So these nanobots would be like tiny little translators, converting the electrical signals of our brains into digital data that computers can understand.
That's the basic idea. And because they would operate at such a fundamental level, they could potentially create a much more intimate and powerful connection than anything we can achieve with current technologies.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be like wearing a clunky headset or using a keyboard. It would be like having a direct link between your thoughts and the digital world.
That's incredible. Imagine being able to access information from the internet instantly just by thinking about it, or being able to control devices with your mind like something out of a science fiction movie.
Those are just a few of the possibilities that he envisioned. He also talked about enhancing our senses, creating virtual experiences that are indistinguishable from reality, and even backing up our minds, essentially achieving a form of digital immortality.
Digital immortality, we touched on that a little bit earlier, but it still feels like a pretty far out concept. How would that even work?
Well, he believed that if we could create a detailed enough model of a person's brain, their memories, personality, thought patterns,
Right.
that we could actually create a digital copy of their mind that could persist even after their physical body dies.
Okay.
It wouldn't be a resurrection, but it would be more like a continuation of their consciousness in this new form.
So it wouldn't be bringing someone back to life, but more like creating a digital twin of their mind that could live on in a virtual world.
That's a good way to think about it. Of course, there are tons of philosophical questions that come with this idea.
Of course.
Would this digital copy really be you, or just a sophisticated simulation?
That's a question that philosophers and scientists will likely debate for decades to come. But it's a debate that we might have to face sooner than we think, given the rapid pace of technological development.
Exactly. And there are practical challenges as well. Like, how do we create a detailed enough model of a brain to capture all the nuances of a person's consciousness? How do we transfer that consciousness to a digital medium? These are huge hurdles that we're only beginning to grapple with.
It sounds like that law of accelerating returns comes into play here again.
Absolutely. Kurzweil argued that our ability to understand and model the brain is advancing exponentially, just like other technologies. He pointed to projects like the Human Brain Project, which is attempting to create a detailed simulation of the entire human brain.
So as our understanding of the brain grows and as computing power continues to increase, we'll get closer and closer to being able to create these digital copies of our minds.
That was his prediction. He saw mind uploading as a natural consequence of these converging trends, but he also acknowledged that it raises a whole host of ethical considerations.
Like whether these digital minds would have the same rights as biological humans, or who would have access to this technology, it seems like the singularity wouldn't just be a technological revolution, it would be a societal one as well.
Right on the money, his vision wasn't just about gadgets and gizmos. It was about a fundamental shift in what it means to be human, a merging of the biological and the technological that would have profound implications for every aspect of our lives.
It's both exhilarating and a little terrifying to think about, but even if we set aside the mind-bending possibilities of mind uploading and digital immortality, there are still some practical questions about how this merger of human and machine intelligence would actually play out in our everyday lives.
Well, Kurzweil believed that one of the most impactful ways this merger would manifest itself would be through the concept of mind expansion, where nanobots could actually enhance our brains and create a direct interface between our thoughts and the digital world.
It sounds a bit like giving our brains a turbo boost.
It is, in a way. He envisioned nanobots creating high-speed connections between neurons in our brains, essentially augmenting our biological neural networks with a non-biological overlay. This would dramatically enhance our cognitive abilities, allowing us to process information faster, store more memories, and even communicate telepathically.
Telepathy, that sounds like something out of a comic book.
It might seem far-fetched, but Kurzweil believed that nanobots could actually facilitate direct communication between brains, essentially allowing us to share thoughts and emotions without the need for language or external devices.
It would completely revolutionize how we interact with each other. Imagine being able to collaborate on projects or share ideas instantly without the limitations of language barriers or physical distance.
Exactly. And he went even further, suggesting that mind expansion could eventually allow us to merge our consciousness with a vast network of non-biological intelligence, creating a collective mind that transcends the limitations of individual human brains.
A collective mind, so it's not just about individuals becoming smarter, it's about connecting our minds together into a larger whole.
That was his ultimate vision. He saw this collective mind as a powerful force for good, capable of solving problems that are beyond the reach of individual humans and accelerating progress in science, technology, and every other field of human endeavor.
That's a powerful vision. But it also raises a lot of questions. Would we lose our individuality in this collective mind? Would we still be human in the traditional sense?
These are questions that he himself grappled with, and they're questions that we will need to confront as we move closer to the singularity. But even if we never achieve a full merger of consciousness, the idea of mind expansion still has the potential to revolutionize our world.
It's incredible to think about the possibilities. Imagine a world where we can learn new skills, instantly communicate effortlessly with anyone on the planet, and solve complex problems collaboratively, all thanks to this seamless integration of technology and human intelligence.
It's a world that's both exciting and challenging, a world that demands that we re-examine our assumptions about what it means to be human and how we want to shape the future.
It's a lot to take in, but it's a conversation that we need to be having because the future is coming, whether we're ready for it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we continue our deep dive into Kurzweil's vision, it's important to remember that the singularity isn't just some far-off event. It's a process that's already underway, a gradual but accelerating merging of technology and humanity that is reshaping our world in profound ways.
Okay, so we've talked about mind uploading, mind expansion, the potential for a collective mind. It seems like Kurzweil's vision of the singularity is all about pushing the boundaries of what's possible, both technologically and in terms of our own human potential.
That's a great way to summarize it. He believed that the singularity was not an endpoint, but a new beginning, a launchpad for a new era of human evolution and expansion.
But he also acknowledged that there are risks and challenges involved in this process, right? He wasn't just blindly optimistic about the future.
You're absolutely right. He dedicated a significant portion of his book to exploring the potential dangers of the singularity, and he emphasized the importance of proceeding with caution and foresight.
So what were some of the risks that he highlighted? What were the things that he thought we needed to be particularly careful about?
Well, one of the most pressing dangers, according to Kurzweil, was the potential for self-replicating nanobots to go haywire. He described a scenario where these microscopic machines designed to repair damage or build new structures could multiply uncontrollably, consuming resources and potentially devastating the environment. It's often referred to as the gray goose scenario.
Okay, that definitely sounds like something we'd want to avoid.
Yeah.
What did he suggest we do to prevent such a catastrophic outcome?
Well, he proposed a number of safeguards, including careful design principles, robust testing procedures, and something that he called the broadcast architecture.
Okay.
This essentially meant that instead of each nanobot being able to replicate autonomously, they would require specific instructions broadcast from a central control system.
So it's like having a kill switch for nanobots. If they start behaving erratically, we could just shut them down remotely.
That's a simplified way to think about it, but the key idea is to prevent them from running amok and replicating out of control. He also emphasized the need for redundancy and fail-safe mechanisms, ensuring that if one system malfunctions, others can take over.
It's reassuring to know that he wasn't advocating for reckless technological development. He clearly recognized the potential for harm, even if he remained ultimately optimistic about the future.
Absolutely. He also addressed the potential for artificial intelligence to be misused, whether intentionally for malicious purposes or unintentionally, due to unforeseen consequences of poorly designed algorithms.
That's a concern that we hear a lot about these days,
Yeah.
especially as AI becomes more powerful and pervasive in our lives. We've seen examples of algorithmic bias where AI systems reflect the prejudices of their creators or the data they're trained on.
You're right, that's a real concern, and Kurzweil was aware of it. He advocated for transparency in AI development, urging developers to make their algorithms open source and to adhere to clear ethical guidelines to ensure that AI systems are aligned with human values.
So it's not just about the technology itself. It's about the values and intentions that are baked into its design and how we choose to use it.
Exactly. Technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. The responsibility lies with us as creators and users of technology to guide its development and application in ways that benefit humanity and contribute to a positive future.
It sounds like Kurzweil's vision of the singularity is a complex tapestry of both immense potential and significant risks. It's a future that demands not only technological ingenuity, but also careful ethical consideration and a commitment to shaping a world that reflects our highest aspirations.
Well said. And as we delve deeper into this exploration, it's important to remember that the future is not predetermined. We have the power to influence the course of events, to make choices that will shape the singularity and its impact on our lives.
I think that's a really empowering message. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the rapid pace of technological change and to feel like we're just along for the ride. But his vision reminds us that we're not passive observers, we're active participants in shaping the future.
Precisely. And as we move into part 3 of our deep dive, we'll explore some of the criticisms and counter-arguments to Kurzweil's vision, providing a more balanced perspective on the potential challenges and uncertainties that lie ahead.
That's right. We've covered a lot of ground in part 2, from the technical intricacies of mind uploading to the ethical complexities of artificial intelligence. But there's still much more to explore. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll take a critical look at his predictions and consider alternative viewpoints on the road to the singularity. Okay, so welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last 2 parts really digging into Ray Kurzweil's vision of the singularity. And
It's
exciting.
the gold vision.
It's terrifying. There's a lot to unpack there, but as with any bold vision of the future, it's important to kind of look at it from all angles.
Absolutely. And we've been talking about this optimistic perspective that Kurzweil puts forward, but there are definitely plenty of critics out there who question his predictions and highlight potential pitfalls that we need to be considering as well.
Okay, so let's dive into some of those counter-arguments. What are some of the main criticisms of his ideas?
Well, one of the most common critiques is that Kurzweil might be underestimating the sheer complexity of biological systems. Even with all the advancements in nanotechnology that he envisions, Some experts argue that creating these nanobots that are capable of safely and effectively interacting with the very delicate machinery of living cells is far more challenging than he suggests.
So it's not just a matter of like shrinking down our existing technology to the nanoscale.
Not at all. Biology operates on principles that we're only beginning to understand.
Right.
There are these intricate feedback loops, emergent properties, and a level of interconnectedness that makes manipulating these systems without unintended consequences incredibly difficult.
Yeah, even if we could create nanobots to like repair damage or target pathogens, there's always that risk that they could disrupt other vital processes that we might not even be aware of.
Exactly, and that's a risk that some critics believe that Kurzweil, in his enthusiasm for nanotechnology's potential, kind of downplays.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the idea of mind expansion, using nanobots to augment our brains and potentially merge with non-biological intelligence? What kind of concerns have critics raised about that?
Well, one of the biggest worries is that it could actually drastically alter our sense of self and our relationship with the world.
Mhm.
Critics argue that our consciousness is fundamentally tied to our biological bodies and brains, and breaking that connection could actually have these really profound psychological and existential consequences.
So it's not just about boosting our cognitive abilities.
Yeah,
It's about the risk of losing something essential to what it means to be human.
that's the fear. They worry that we could end up creating this new form of intelligence that's totally alien to our values and experiences, and in the process, we lose our sense of agency and autonomy.
It's like that classic science fiction trope of humans being overtaken by their own creations.
Exactly. And while Kurzweil believed that we would remain in control, critics say that it's naive to think that we can fully predict or control the long-term consequences of such a radical transformation.
So we've talked about the nanotech risks. We've talked about the concerns about mind expansion. Are there any other criticisms of Kurzweil's singularity vision?
Well, another big one is that he might be overly optimistic about the pace of technological advancement.
Okay.
While technology is undoubtedly moving fast, some experts argue that Kurzweil's predictions are a little bit too rosy.
Hmm.
They say that he underestimates the inevitable challenges and setbacks that happen in any complex endeavor.
So it's not just a smooth upward trajectory, like there are going to be bumps along the way, maybe even major roadblocks.
Absolutely. And some critics think that those bumps could significantly delay or even derail Kurzweil's timeline for the singularity.
Right.
They point to past predictions about technological progress that turn out to be way too optimistic, cautioning us against putting too much faith in these exponential projections.
It's a good reminder that even with all the incredible advancements that we're seeing, there are always these unforeseen hurdles, and it's easy to get caught up in the excitement and underestimate the complexity involved in actually making these grand visions a reality.
Absolutely. And when we're talking about something as intricate and as far-reaching as my old, the singularity being realistic about potential obstacles is really crucial.
Okay, so we've got the nanotech concerns, we've got the mind expansion worries, we've got the possibility that he might be a little bit too optimistic about the timeline. Is there anything else that's been raised as a criticism?
Well, one that's often overlooked is the potential for the singularity to actually worsen existing social and economic inequalities.
Hmm.
Critics argue that the benefits of things like extended lifespans or enhanced cognitive abilities would likely be distributed very unevenly, primarily benefiting those who are already in positions of wealth and power.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about who controls it and how it's accessed. And if those decisions are made by a small elite, the singularity could actually end up reinforcing existing power structures rather than leading to a more equitable society.
Exactly, and that's an aspect that Kurzweil doesn't really fully address in his work. He focused very heavily on the technological side, but he didn't really dive too deeply into the social and political ramifications.
It's a crucial point, the old saying, you know, technology is neutral, but its application is not.
Well said. And we really need to be having a broader discussion about the values and the principles that are guiding the development and the use of these incredibly powerful technologies.
So we've explored all these different criticisms of Kurzweil's vision of the singularity, and it seems like there's just a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Like, will it even happen? And if it does happen, what form will it take and what will the consequences be?
Well, that's a fair assessment. Trying to predict the future is always a gamble. And with something as complex and potentially transformative as the singularity there are bound to be surprises and unforeseen outcomes.
So for our listeners who've been with us on this journey, what would you say is the key takeaway from this whole discussion?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the future is not set in stone.
Mhm.
We have the power to shape the path of technological development. We can choose the values that guide us, and we can create a future that actually reflects our best aspirations, not our fears.
It's not about passively waiting for the singularity to happen. It's about actively participating in its creation.
Yeah, exactly. We need to be informed, we need to be engaged, and we need to be willing to have these difficult conversations.
Yeah.
The future of humanity really is at stake.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into The Singularity is Near. It's been an incredible journey exploring both the awe-inspiring possibilities and the potential challenges that lie ahead.
It has been a fascinating journey, and I would encourage everyone to continue to explore these ideas, engage in these thoughtful discussions, and really work towards a future that is both technologically advanced and ethically grounded.
Because ultimately, the future is what we make it. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.